I'm back on my hotel balcony in this beautiful resort on the Greek island of Kos to show you another of the best game prizes from the ACO World Amateur Championship. And this game was nominated by one of the coaches here, Eric Rosen, and it's played between Liam Schroeder and Andy Proudfoot. Andy from England, and he's a regular at these ACO events on Kos and in Crete as well. So this is played in Group F, and that's a rating category of 1501 to 1650. So here we go. This is a really sparkling game. So have fun watching this. I hope the sound quality is okay. It's a little bit windy this morning. We're right by the sea. I can hear the waves crashing on the beach. So anyway, I hope that's all right. E4. D5. The Scandi from Andy. And that's taken, of course. And then instead of queen takes d5, which is one of the main lines, knight f6. And here white has a choice of simply allowing black to recapture on d5. You can play d4 or knight f3, or you can protect that pawn with c4. Very often this will go into a Panov-Botvinnik attack with c6 by black, like this. And it's a big mistake to take this, because then black is able to exploit that hole on d4, play e5, play bishop c5, get very quick development. So normally after c6, white plays d4, black takes, and knight c3, and this is the so-called Panov-Botvinnik attack. A very respectable line in the Caro. We've transposed to a Caro-Kann now. However, instead of c6, the normal move, Andy plays e6. Now, this is the so-called Scandinavian. Excuse me, I'm getting mixed up in between my Nordic countries. This is not the Scandinavian. It's a variation of the Scandinavian. It's the Icelandic gambit. It's the Icelandic gambit. And this had a sort of burst of popularity way back in the late 80s. It was very trendy then. Haven't seen it so much recently. So yeah, it's great to see an Icelandic gambit again. Now, if white declines this one with d4, then this is very comfortable for black. For example, knight c3, you can play bishop b4 there. You can actually get this from a French exchange variation. But I mean, black is absolutely fine there. So really, in this case, white should accept the gambit, and that is what Liam Schroeder did. He took the pawn. So what is it with the Icelandic gambit? What compensation does black have here? Well, you can see that, already black is 2-0 up. Black's development is already better than white's. Two pieces in play, and white has no pieces in play at all. But also, it's going to be very easy to bring this bishop on f8 into the game as a clear diagonal, and also the knight will probably come out to c6 very easily as well. But is it worth a pawn? Well, there's more to it than just quick development. It's the fact that this square and this square, indeed, are weakened because of the advance of that c-pawn. You see, every time you advance a pawn, it weakens the squares behind it or beside it. In this case, these squares. And that pawn also blocks the bishop. So white's development, compared to black's, is somewhat restricted. So, in a nutshell, that's the compensation that black has. And white actually has to be very careful about, how to bring the pieces into the game. So white starts with knight c3. I think a little bit more urgency is required here. I think bishop e2 and followed by knight f3 is probably a better way. But anyway, it's still black has compensation. So knight c3. And Andy goes for bishop b4. So rapid development. And now queen a4 check. Well, was it, I can't remember who said it first, but when I give a check, I fear no one. Feels like you're in control. But I have a feeling that white might have been regretting that move, queen a4 check, after knight c6, because of course that bishop is protected. And then what exactly is the queen doing on a4? Because black's king is going to castle very quickly, and then there's really no point in having the queen on a4. So that looks like a rush of blood to the head. So the queen went back to b3. Well, that's another waste of a move. It's not clear to me that the queen is better placed on b3 than a4, actually. And now Andy strikes here. And that's the first moment that looks very unpleasant for white. So looking down the e-file. And of course the threat is to give a discovered attack with bishop takes c4. That's very nasty. Discovered check. And this is already very, very difficult for white. So knight e2 was played, blocking the e-file. But then again, how exactly is white going to develop now? So Andy simply decides castle. Excellent. So the rooks are now connected. The king is completely safe. And this is a really difficult position for white. For example, if g3, looking to play bishop g2, then knight e5. That knight looks at those squares on f3 and d3. The bishop threatens to take on c4. I mean, that looks terrible. What else could white play? Just looks really nasty. d3 probably could be met by knight e5 again. Looks really awful. Or even just a rook to the d file. There's also interesting stuff going on with knight d4 as well. I mean, this looks great. White played a3. And now Andy gets flashy. Knight d4. So this pinpoints why putting the queen on b3 was certainly a big mistake. Because it sets up this really lovely tactic. Okay, well let's take a look at all the captures available. Well, the queen's attacked. So what does white do about that? Well, what about knight takes d4? Well, then there's this very nice discovered check. Wins the queen. That's no good. Okay, what about queen takes bishop? Oh, but then we've got a nice knight fork there, checking the king, and then on the next turn, you spin back and take the queen. So white's in a spot of trouble now. Okay, what about bringing the queen back to d1? Well, black has a few very attractive possibilities here, but we could just play bishop takes c4, and then the threat is to play bishop b3. That's a very unfortunate location for white's queen. So white played queen a4. And Andy went all in. Took the pawn on c4 with the bishop, allowing pawn takes bishop on b4. So Black is now a piece down. And I like this, a quiet move. Rook f e8, very calm. Just putting more pressure on the knight on e2. And this is a tough one for white. b5 was played in the game. But if, let's say, queen d1, protecting the knight, then we're back to this move. Bishop b3 looks tremendous. Wins the queen. Okay, what about d3? So looking perhaps after bishop takes to play bishop b3, blocking the e-file. But then bishop b3 anyway. If queen a5, knight c2 check. I mean, there are a few ways to win this one, but this is really nice. And in fact, simple move, rook d8. I love it when all the pieces come into play. This, I should say, this didn't happen, but I just wanted to show this line because it's so attractive and somehow so thematic that black is just playing with all the pieces. So if g3, trying to bring a piece into the game, then rook takes, opening up the d-file, and knight here, queen e4, knight d5, and well, we just need a nice discovered check from the knight, and that's going to be checkmate very shortly. So in the game, b5 was played. So the queen threatens the bishop. Queen on a4 threatens the bishop. Knight takes e2. Well, if bishop takes, then bishop takes d3, trying to block with the bishop. I mean, that would maybe prolong things a little bit. But the problem is that white's king simply can't escape, because the bishop on d3 cuts off castling. This rook is completely out of the game, and so, you know, if black plays a6 and just opens things up, then essentially white is playing a rook down. But in the game, queen takes bishop was played, and now knight takes c3, discover check. Bishop e2, knight e2. So now it's black that's a piece up. White still can't castle, actually. That's the funny thing. King d1 played. And now Andy was very pragmatic and simply decided to exchange pieces when you're a piece up. You know, that's a tried and tested method of getting the win. And queen e4. And white doesn't have much better than to exchange. So black is in this endgame a whole knight up. And, well, what's more, white's king still doesn't look very well placed. Yep, that's another pawn in the bag. Look, I love this position. Look at black's pawns. You see, this shows that Andy's been very efficient with his development. No superfluous pawn moves, just playing with pieces. And the game finished here. At this point, white had had enough and decided to resign. Quite understandably, a piece down, completely hopeless, and I just love black's coordination. So, well played to Andy Proudfoot. Excellent win, sparkling win. And I have to say, this Icelandic gambit is very, very dangerous. I've seen a lot of games where, well, very strong players actually get caught out very badly early on in the game. I'm not gonna give you an antidote to this. I'll leave you to work that out for yourselves. But I just say, if you play this position with white, be warned. It's very, very tricky. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching.